And I'm saying to myself, why am I alive? Why am I alive and the heroes are dead?
And of course, September 11th is something that no American will ever forget. But what was it like to be there on scene? Today, we're joined by two photojournalists who can tell us all about that because they were on scene at 9/11 in the hours after the attack. Todd Mazel and David Hanshew are both photojournalists for the New York Daily News and spent a great deal of time at Ground Zero on 9/11 and the hours and days afterwards. David, you were there working for the New York Daily News, and in fact, you had quite the time on scene. But let me get back to the beginning. What were you doing when suddenly this happened and you had to redirect your day?
So the morning of September 11th was the first day of school, and I was heading to NYU to teach my photojournalism class. Wasn't supposed to work until election returns came in that evening, but I was in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the right time, or the right place at the wrong time. But I was very nearby the Trade Center when the first plane hit. Picked up a cell phone, called my office, said, "I'm right down here," and they said, "Go, go, go," and followed Rescue Company 1 uh, right down to the Trade Center. These were firefighters who I had covered for years, decades actually, in New York City. And as they're pulling on their air tanks and getting their tools, they're waving out their back window, back door of the rescue truck to me. Um, all, I think there were 19 firefighters on the rig that morning. All 19 of them were on their last run. They all lost their life that morning.
Wow. Covering this kind of thing as a news gatherer, you sort of divorce yourself from reality and just trying to get very clinical about capturing the images, whether they're still or video. But this happened in your home area full of people you know. That just had to add so much to it.
Well, I might disagree slightly with you about being um, removing yourself from it. I think the best photojournalists need to feel uh, both an emotion for what they're witnessing and the emotion of the people who they're capturing. And the fact that it happened in our home city um, made it even tougher to deal with, both emotionally and for myself physically.
How long a day did you spend? Say that first day you were on scene, was it as long a day as I can imagine?
Actually, for myself, had it a lot easier than many other people. I got there just after the first plane hit, before the second plane struck. And after the first tower came down, I was buried alive, badly injured. And, for me, the game was over in the first or second inning. Photographers like Todd, all of my coworkers, other photojournalists and journalists covered this story not only 24, 35, 40 hours the first couple of days, but for days and days and weeks and months afterwards.
Sure.
And their exposure was far worse than mine.
Well, let's bring in Todd Mazel because he's your cohort, also for the New York Daily News, was on scene taking pictures as well. I always want to say shooting video, but capturing images of some sort, and some very important images that a lot of people know your work and Todd's work, even if they don't realize it. Todd, what was your experience down there in the very beginning on the first day?
Well, I got to say, I wouldn't have normally have been around that area at that time, but I had just come from the Bronx, where we were covering the primary elections. I had covered Fernando Ferrer, and and I came down into Manhattan because I had another job in Manhattan that morning, which was also very unusual, especially for that hour. I was on 125th Street when I heard the first call come over the police radio of a plane hitting the World Trade Center. And I called in right away. And yeah, it was the same thing as David, go, go, go. And I got in behind a emergency service police truck. and followed them down. Part of the way we drove on the bike path to get through traffic. Um, when I got to Canal Street, I saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center.
Wow.
David was already down there.
When something like that happens, do you just kind of go into picture taking autopilot? I mean, that sounds trite, but do you kind of just get into the zone? I know I do when I'm at a big story shooting video.
You absolutely get into the zone. You're searching for images, new views of what is going on there. And uh, I pulled the car up on a sidewalk on a median, and I ran up. I didn't want to get too close with my vehicle because I knew a lot of emergency vehicles were coming in. Uh, I didn't want to necessarily get blocked in either. I came up Vesey. There were plane parts all over the ground. Started photographing them. The FBI shooed me away.
Right.
Ran up the Church Street. Ran into some of my other colleagues and some of my police friends,
Sure.
and I started photographing them. Some of them did not make it that day. It was pretty tough.
I can only imagine that it was, but in the moment when you were taking pictures, I mean, did any of that enter your head, or like I said, you were sort of in the zone doing what you're born to do? Did all those feelings come later?
You go into autopilot. You're shooting, you're looking for different images, you're looking for certain things. Uh, David got some jumpers. I didn't get any of the jumpers except the ones that hit the ground.
Right.
I was close. I was really close. He was also close. We view things differently. Each
Sure.
photographer just has a different style and a different way of looking at things. Um, I just kept shooting, except for one moment where I saw firefighter Danny Sir get hit with by a jumper, landed right on him. I saw it, and they started dragging him towards me, and I'm photographing it. And I immediately ran to try to get help, and I run into the chief medical officer for the fire department. I say, "You got to come with me." And I looked at him, and he didn't look good at all. He looked like he wasn't going to make it, and they rushed him out of there. And for that one moment, I just stopped taking pictures,
Hmm.
and I just kind of lost it for a second. And I said to myself, I gotta break out of this right now. I gotta get back to work.
Right.
And I took a couple of pictures of the little Greek church that was down there. And all of a sudden, I look up and the sky opened up and the devil was coming towards me.
I bet. That's a strong statement, but knowing what little I even know about what it was like to be down there, it sounds like an accurate one. And we're going to talk a lot more about it and get into some of the things that you guys ran into in just a moment, and we'll be right back. And we're back talking to David Hanshu and Todd Mazel, two photojournalists from the New York Daily News who were on scene in New York City during 9/11. David, you and Todd were down there independently at some point, but at some point your paths crossed. How did that happen?
So when the South Tower came down, I was pretty badly injured. I was covered in debris, buried alive, thought I was going to die. Was rescued by a bunch of firefighters, paramedics, and police officers. And as they're carrying me away from the scene, I had lost my glasses, but managed to hold on to two cameras, each holding millions of pixels,
Sure.
images from the first hour of the attack on 9/11. So I couldn't really see anything without my glasses, but I did notice the shape of somebody with a camera taking pictures. And lo and behold, it was my coworker, my friend, fellow Daily News photographer, Todd Mazel, um, who just happened to see um, rescue workers carrying an injured survivor and followed his journalistic instinct and started taking pictures.
Well, Todd, take up the story from there. You weren't just, having a sandwich, just, doing nothing. You were quite busy down there at 9/11 when I guess you saw your friend hurt.
Look, I ran a different direction. Thank God for me. So I didn't get hurt. I
Right.
ran into a building, and the ceilings collapsed and the wall caved in, and I was able to crawl out of there. Um, Before I ran into David, I ran into a firefighter that I found under the debris, Kevin Shea, and we rescued him. And then I'm moving around, looking around for other survivors. I'm hearing people yelling for help. And then I ran into David with the paramedics, with the paramedic, the cop, and the firefighter, and I said to them, do you need help carrying him?" He said, "No, we got him." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to grab his cameras." So I pick up his cameras and I saved that, and we made it all the way into Battery Park City, and they laid him down on the ground inside the deli.
Right. David, what is
So the picking up the cameras is a very, very important part of the story
I would think so.
because as a photojournalist, now it's hard to fathom the days before Twitter and the days before live Facebook. Uh, but the only way to really get our images out to the public was to take our cameras, to take our digital discs, upload them, edit them, and transmit the pictures. So Todd did probably the most important thing outside of any rescue worker. The best pictures in the world can be in your cameras, but he took my equipment and took my photographs back to the office where he uploaded them, edited them, and put them into the system for both archival purposes and for immediate use online at the paper's website and in the paper the next day. So if it wasn't for Todd taking my equipment that day, 180 images of history would have been a day late getting to the readers and viewers of the paper.
That is a huge move, and someone who accumulates data and pictures and video for the news, I understand that completely. That's one photog doing another photog is solid. Because without that, why are you there? You know, how once you got injured, David, were you taken off scene and you didn't come back for a while to the area?
About 9 months till I got back to work. I had a bit of a recovery,
Wow.
learning how to walk again outside of the, the breathing problems, the burns, the emotional scars
Sure.
that even stick with photographers and journalists today. Um, but yeah, I gave my equipment to Todd. Another bunch of rescue workers took me down to a boat behind Battery Park City, put me on that police launch with some injured firefighters and police officers, took us across the Hudson River to the Statue of Liberty, where we were put on ambulances and taken to Jersey hospitals.
Good Lord, that's an adventure all in itself, and it's not how you plan on spending that day. No news gatherer ever plans to be part of the story.
Nah, I was just heading to school to teach that evening. That
Todd, you had a bit of a longer stay in that I guess you didn't get injured and were there for quite a while taking pictures. What was your experience like the rest of that day, Todd?
Well, I got to tell you, part of one of the things that taking his pictures, his cameras, was an advantage for me because I was low on disk space also. So I was able to use his discs
Yeah.
without, of course, deleting his images, but taking his discs and loading them into my cameras
Sure.
and using the rest of his disk space. So I was able to stay even longer than I probably could have because I would have ran out of room on my cameras. So that helped a lot. But I kept his cameras. I put them into uh, Rescue Two's truck, and I stored them there while I went out and continued shooting. Um, and God knows, we could have been killed that day on the second collapse. That was pretty nasty.
That was nasty, but it sounds like you two just operated as two veteran photojournalists, which is what your newspaper needed that day, and is what the world needed that day. Because without people like you taking pictures and gathering information, the truth doesn't get out there. Aside from the tactical way you spent your day, which we have covered, I do want to talk about the emotional impact and the lessons it left with you. But before we do that, let's take another quick break. And we're back to Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news. Today, of course, we're talking about 9/11, and we're talking with two people who know very well what it was like that day. Todd Mazel and David Hanshu are both from the New York Daily News and were at 9/11 in New York City on that day. We've talked a bit, guys, about the tactical aspects of that day and how you spent that day and the coming days. I'm curious about what kind of overall impressions it left from you. It's been 24 years, which is impossible to even say out loud. It doesn't seem like that's even possible. But for example, David, what did it leave you with overall?
So I think the one big picture that I took away from that date is how very fragile life is and how it can change or end um, in the literal blink of an eye. That day there was nothing that I did or did not do that assured my survival, but whatever flock of angels that I accumulated, from the cops, the firefighters, the paramedics, who all went out of their way for a stranger and helped me survive, to the physical therapists who helped me walk again, to my family and my friends who picked up the slack and stood there with me and behind me and held my hand and pushed me towards recovery. The appreciation of that is beyond comprehension.
Sure. Did it I know you had a longer recovery than Todd did, but did are there things that happened on that morning 24 some years ago that have an effect on how you live your life today? Did it change you intrinsically, or did it just put another arrow in your quiver?
I think um, I think that I tend to, when confronted with a situation that's a little different, um, reach into myself and say, is arguing about this going to change how the world is turning on its axis? And if the answer is yes, then it's worth arguing and fighting about. And if the answer is no, then I think I become a little more understanding and tended to really be concerned about what's happening with other people, um, in order to try to mitigate my response to something that's a little different.
Sure. I love that. I love that, David. I have not covered ground zero on 9/11, but I've covered a lot of different things, good, bad, and everything in between. And as I always say on these things, it, if anything, has gifted me with more empathy than I had when I started.
Mhm.
You can't stick a camera in someone's face on their very worst day and
Nope.
not feel something. If you can, then you're not like me, and you're not like all the other photographers I've ever met. Um,
Mhm.
Todd, what was your experience like? You were there on scene a little longer than David because of a lack of injury. How has it affected you long term?
I spent a lot of the time after David was gone, off to the hospital, uh, yeah, taking pictures, but I also was doing search and rescue. I put on a helmet. I was wearing gloves from Rescue 2. They were my friends. A lot of the firefighters were my friends,
Sure.
just like David. David had a lot of friends in the fire department, police department. I had a lot also, and I knew they were dead. I knew, and it affected me. I had to sit down for a few minutes and have a good cry. Uh, and I'm saying to myself, why am I alive? Why am I alive and the heroes are dead? The first responders, they are dead. I knew that. And then it came to me. I said, there must be a higher purpose. there must be some reason why I'm alive and they're not. And I'm probably not going to understand that completely. But what I did understand was that what we were doing was important, that we were writing maybe the next testament.
Sure.
So I really got down to it. And what happened to me after 9/11, after that day, after the few days that I spent there, was, yeah, I had PTSD. Sure, things. I was looking for the next terrorist bomb. I was looking for the next uh, incident. I was short with people, especially uh, public affairs officers for fire department or the police. I said, "Get the hell out of my way. My job is important," and I made them understand that. And I was short with them, and I would argue with them and yell at them and get out of my way. And I understood from my point of view was my job is very, very important to inform the public. And you are obstructing it. And you're in the way of something that's ordained by God. I
Right.
mean, that's the way I was feeling.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still feel that to some degree.
Many years have passed since 9/11, and politics has gone a little crazy. Without getting political, do you think people would have benefited from seeing some of the things you gentlemen saw, as painful as it may have been? 9/11 is 24 years in the past, and to some people, it's barely a footnote, which is crazy to someone my age, having lived through it as an adult. Do you think people should know more about it or less?
They need to know more. They really do. There are people online, social media, making up conspiracy theories. Somehow the FBI was involved. Somehow government planned this. There's even people making jokes about 9/11, and I try to go out there and educate people about this. And it's been my mission since that time to tell that. And I've done gallery exhibits of my work from 9/11 many times now. I think David has done that too. David was involved in the Boulevard Orlando gallery exhibit. I just did a story on that today for
Oh,
AM New York. It's important that we remind people of what happened that day and the bravery of those people who didn't make it.
I hear you. David, what were your
Well,
impressions?
so try to take the politics out of it, which is difficult when there are cuts to the 9/11 health programs. And, we promised folks we're going to take care of you for the rest of your life, with more people getting sick and dying
Right.
every single day of 9/11 related illnesses. But I think two of the greatest things that we could keep in mind that help me remember that day. The blue lights that are lit every year the night before, the night of September 11th into the early morning hours, two ghostly deep blue towers
Yeah.
that extend from a parking garage right next to ground zero up into the heavens and beyond are just probably one of the most beautiful memorials that you could ask for that day. And if you're going to debate what happened that day, if you're going to say it never happened, if you're going to say it's a conspiracy, I think the greatest way that anybody could put that negative energy behind them is to participate in a National Day of Service where school kids, where corporate entities, where groups of people get together and they're going to clean up this park in memory of the lives that were lost. Or we're going to pack 1,000,000 meals like they do on the Intrepid every September 11th. And we're going to distribute those 1,000,000 meals to people who need food. So a National Day of Service to me, and the blue lights, that that light up the skies every September 11th, are two of the greatest ways of commemorating one of the most horrible days that we could ever imagine.
I love the idea of turning such a tragedy into something positive. As news
Mm.
gatherers, we go attend random things at a breakneck pace, and it's awfully easy not to remember anything of it by the end of the day. but I know that in my 35 years behind the lens, I've got things that I think about every day that I've experienced, and nothing was of caliber of September 11th. How are you guys today? Are you guys are both of you retired? I know David is are you retired, Todd? You still working? I think you said you weren't today, actually.
I did a story today for AM New York. I'm still a contributing editor there. I don't work regularly. I work when I want to, which
Okay.
is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, what's that
Uh,
like?
and I work on the things I want to work on. Uh, Today was a 9/11 related story, and I urge people to take a look at that. It involved one of our colleagues, Willie Lopez,
Yeah.
whose plaque from the Boulevard Arellano Gallery, and you received one too, David, right? Um, has been missing for 10 years, and we recovered it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was recovered in the trash.
Oh, that's a story.
What?
It's a great story.
Yeah, wait 1 second. What do you mean I'm retired? What do you know? Who told you what? I'm not retired. I'm still out taking pictures every day.
Yeah, and you're still teaching, right?
Well, whatever you're doing, spending your time now these days, I appreciate the time you've given us because this has helped us understand what it was like to be there at something that every American thinks they know back and forth. And there's been so much media and so many stories and so many shows and articles and pictures about 9/11, but I dare say that no one understands it better than those of you who were there. And I just want to thank both of you for taking time out of your day to tell us about it, because we really want to live up to the title of this streaming show, and that is Behind the Lens. And as you guys well know, well before I even got started, there's a lot you can learn behind the lens, and I think people need to hear the stories behind it. So thanks to both of you for giving us your time. Both Todd Mazel and David Hanshu, both of the New York Daily News, neither of them fully retired, but both of them deserving it whenever they want to cash that check. So thank you, David. Thank you, Todd. And thank you for watching Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news, and we'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.